Have you ever whispered to yourself, in the silence of your bedroom, what else do I need to do to finally be enough for someone to stay? You gave everything, your time, your love, your soul, and yet, they still left, without a word, without looking back. This is for you. You've rewritten yourself 1,000 times, haven't you? Softened your voice, just to be more likable, dimmed your light, so they could shine, bent your boundaries, to prove you were worthy of love, and still, they walked away, leaving behind silence, where there should have been devotion. You loved with a heart wide open. Raw, relentless, hoping, just to be chosen. Just once, but what you received was emptiness, rejection, that gnawing ache, maybe I'm not enough. I want to pause here and speak to your soul. That belief didn't begin with this relationship. From childhood, we were taught a dangerous myth that love is earned by being good, by being quiet, by pleasing, by staying small. We were told we needed someone to complete us, that to be lovable, we must change, be thinner, kinder, more patient, more perfect. So we became performers, pleasers. We wore masks so well, we forgot what our real face looked like. But Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, said something radical. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And many of us are still unconsciously repeating the same story, running after love that feels like punishment, chasing people who mirror the very neglect we once survived. Why do we give so much to people who give so little? Because somewhere deep inside, we confuse pain with passion, we mistake longing for loyalty, we cling to the hope, if I just love harder, maybe they'll see me. But that's not love, that is self-abandonment, disguised as devotion. When you don't know your worth, you'll keep finding people who reflect your doubt back to you. You'll fall for the ones who can't love you, not because you're unlovable, but because their love confirms your fear that you're not enough, and that fear is lying to you. True healing begins, not with more effort, but with less betrayal of yourself, not by proving your worth to others, but by remembering it within. Loving yourself, it's not about spa days or cute affirmations on your mirror. It's about setting boundaries when your heart is still shaking. It's about walking away, not because they were cruel, but because you've outgrown the need to be rescued. And when you do that, something shifts. You begin to attract differently, not from desperation, but from wholeness. Not from fear, but from freedom. You'll no longer crave someone to complete you. You'll want someone who amplifies you, because now, you're not waiting to be chosen. You choose you, first, fiercely, finally. So if your heart is whispering today, am I not enough? Let this echo gently into you. You were never meant to earn love by erasing yourself. You are not too much. You are not too complicated. You are not hard to love. You are simply remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. And that woman, she doesn't chase love, she is love. What if I told you, you're not actually in love, you're just afraid of being alone? And you've been calling your survival mechanism love. Stay with me. We think we're searching for love, but what many of us are really searching for is relief. Relief from the emptiness, relief from the echo of being unseen, relief from that quiet ache that whispers at night, no one is coming. So we reach out, hoping someone will touch the parts of us we've been too afraid to face. We say, I miss you. But what we really mean is, please, don't make me sit with this pain alone. You give, you overextend, you become everything for them, not because your love is pure, but because your fear is loud, and when fear leads, love becomes a transaction. You're not choosing someone, you're clinging to them. Have you ever felt like you're the only one fighting for the relationship. You text first. You apologize first. You compromise first. You carry the emotional weight, like it's your full-time job. But here's the truth, that's not love, that's survival. You're not giving because you're overflowing, you're giving because you're hoping they'll finally pour something back into you. It's like handing someone your broken heart and saying, "Here, maybe if I give you everything, you'll finally fix this." But love, real love, doesn't work that way, because anything that begins in need will end in dependency. And dependency doesn't feel like safety, it feels like walking on eggshells, fearing that any wrong step will make them leave. Carl Jung had a name for this, identification with the wound. It means, you don't just carry your wound, you become it, and worse, you unconsciously hand that wound to someone else, as if to say, maybe if you love me enough, this pain will go away. But it never does, because no one can fix the parts of you that you're unwilling to face on your own. And when you make someone else responsible for your healing, you give away your power, one apology, one sacrifice, one tear at a time. There's a massive difference between needing love and choosing love. When you need love, it owns you, it dictates your worth, your moods, your decisions. You become reactive, desperate. Every text they don't send feels like rejection. Every plan they cancel feels like abandonment. But when you choose love, from a place of inner fullness, you're not trying to get anything. You're simply showing up to share who you are. No begging, no performing, no losing yourself in the process. I remember the first time I realized I wasn't really in love, I was just terrified of being alone. It shook me, because it meant I had to stop blaming them and start looking at the little girl in me, who still believed she had to earn love. It wasn't about them leaving, it was about me never fully arriving for myself. And maybe, just maybe, that's where it starts for you too. So, what do you do now? You stop searching outward and start building inward. You learn to sit with the ache without numbing it. You learn to hold yourself when no one else does. You learn to fill your own cup so fully that when someone comes along, they're not your oxygen, they're your mirror, a reflection of the wholeness you've already reclaimed. Because love, it isn't meant to fix you, it's meant to meet you. So if you've been loving from your wounds, chasing from your emptiness, begging from your fear, it's time to pause, to come home, to realize you were never broken, just disconnected. And the love you've been searching for, it was never in them. It was the love you forgot to give yourself. What if the person you can't let go of was never really the one you were in love with? What if you were only in love with a reflection of your own forgotten self? Stay with me. This might just change everything. Love isn't random. It's not some magical accident of chemistry. Love is a mirror. It reflects back what lives deep within your unconscious. Carl Jung once said, "We don't fall in love with a person. We fall in love with the part of ourselves we've lost." And when you hear that, something inside you might whisper, that explains everything. Because sometimes, when you fall in love, you're not truly falling for them, you're falling for how they make you feel, something you forgot how to feel. You're falling for the wound they touch, the part of you, still waiting to be seen. You think it's their silence you love, but maybe, that silence reminds you of a father who was never fully present, or a mother who met your needs with cold detachment. You think their distance makes them mysterious, but deep down, it validates an old belief that love must be earned and withheld. And suddenly, your love story isn't about now, it's about then, about an emotional imprint your soul never finished processing. You're not dating a new person, you're reliving an old memory, only this time, you're hoping for a different ending. this, is what Jung called projection. When you haven't made peace with a part of yourself, you unconsciously project it onto someone else. You don't just see them. You see your unmet needs, your childhood longings, your forgotten pain. You're not in love with who they are, you're in love with what they represent. And here's the hard truth, they never signed up to carry all that. No one can be the cure for wounds you won't tend to yourself. No one should become your mirror, just to prove you're worthy of love. That's why we keep attracting the same kinds of people, different faces, same story. You fall for the avoidant, the emotionally unavailable, the one who leaves just when you're finally ready to be seen, and you ask, why does this keep happening to me? But the real question is, what part of you is still choosing this? Because as long as you don't feel whole, you'll keep attracting broken pieces. As long as you don't believe you're enough, you'll keep finding people who confirm that belief, not because you're cursed, but because you're subconscious is begging to be brought into the light. I remember being in love with someone who felt like home, but that home wasn't safe. It was familiar pain, dressed up in romance. He was distant, and I kept chasing. He was silent, and I kept guessing. It took me years to understand I wasn't in love with him. I was in love with the version of me who thought she had to work for love. I was in love with my pattern, and until I faced that pattern, I was never truly free to love or be loved differently. Here's where it changes. The moment you stop chasing people who trigger your wounds and start healing the parts of you that needed them to begin with, you realize they were never the one. They were the messenger, the mirror, the unconscious made visible, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. Love stops being a battlefield. It becomes sacred ground, a place where you no longer project, perform, or pretend, but simply be. So if you're wondering why you can't let go of someone who never fully chose you, ask yourself this: was I ever really in love with them, or was I just trying to love the part of me I thought no one else could? Because when you meet someone who sees you without needing to fix you, save you, or complete you, that's not projection. That is truth, and truth doesn't abandon, it liberates. You don't have to say a word, because your energy says it all. The way you wait for the message that never comes, the way you apologize too quickly, the way you never ask for more, because deep down, you don't believe you deserve it. That silent frequency, it whispers, I'm not enough. Please love me anyway. We live in a world obsessed with appearances, but energy doesn't lie. You can wear the right lipstick, say all the right things, play the cool, low-maintenance version of yourself, but if your soul is trembling with the fear of not being loved, that vibration leaks through every silence, every smile that hides your sadness, every it's okay when it's not. People don't always know why they pull away, but they feel it. The weight, the pressure, the silent expectation. Prove I'm worthy. Make me feel whole. Carl Jung said it best: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that. You're not getting ghosted because you're unattractive. You're not being left because you're too emotional or too much. You're being left because without knowing it, you've handed someone the invisible task of making you feel valuable. And no matter how deeply someone cares, no one can carry the weight of your self-worth forever. That's not love, that's burden. Here's how it plays out. You forgive too quickly because you're afraid they'll leave. You tolerate breadcrumbs because part of you believes that's all you'll ever get. You keep your needs quiet because somewhere you learned that asking is dangerous. And every action, no matter how gentle, sends a message: please don't see my needs, just see me as lovable enough to stay. But love doesn't thrive where we suppress who we are. It thrives where we are willing to be seen fully, even when it's messy. Have you ever noticed how your body reacts in relationships? That anxious flutter when they don't reply, that tightness in your chest when plans change last minute, that rush of relief when they finally give you a little attention. That's not love. That's your nervous system in survival mode. You're not trying to build connection. You're trying to avoid abandonment, and here's the shift. You don't keep love by doing more. You create safety by needing less, not less emotion, not less truth, but less dependency. When you no longer need someone to complete you, you allow them the freedom to love you without pressure, and love in freedom grows deeper than love born in fear. There was a time I believed the more I gave, the more I'd be loved. I said yes when I wanted to say no. I smiled through hurt. I shrank to fit into someone else's comfort, and still, they left. It took years for me to see it wasn't my too muchness that drove them away. It was the energy of lack. I didn't know I was radiating. I wasn't loving from power. I was loving from panic, and no one, not even the kindest heart, can stay in a love that feels like a responsibility. So how do you change this? You start by listening to the energy behind your actions. Do you reach out because you miss them, or because you're afraid they've forgotten you? Do you give because you want to, or because you hope they'll stay? You start catching yourself when the old patterns return, and you gently whisper back, I am already enough. I do not need to beg to be seen. Over time, your energy changes. You become less frantic, more rooted. You stop reaching from emptiness and start radiating from fullness. And when that happens, people feel it, they trust it, and love begins to feel like peace, not pressure. So if you've been loving with trembling hands, waiting for the message, the validation, the sign that you're worthy, let this be it. You are not hard to love. You are just not meant to beg. Love doesn't arrive when you do more, it stays when you finally believe you are already enough. You don't need to be stronger. You don't need to be tougher. You don't need to handle it all just to prove you're healed. What you do need is to finally see yourself clearly, not just the polished parts, but the bruised ones, the silent ones, the hidden ones. Because the real journey, it's not about becoming someone new, it's about returning to who you've always been. Carl Jung called this sacred process individuation, the journey of becoming whole. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about reclaiming what you were taught to abandon. And let's be honest, this path, it's not glamorous. It doesn't come with applause or overnight clarity. It's quiet, it's raw, it's the kind of healing that happens in the dark, when no one is watching. It asks you to stop performing and start remembering. Individuation begins when you stop trying to be better and start asking yourself the harder questions. What parts of me am I still hiding, hoping they'll make me more lovable? What childhood wounds are still running the show, quietly deciding how I love, how I trust, and when I let go? You see, you were never broken, but you were taught to abandon yourself, to suppress your anger, to shrink your light, to numb your needs, all in exchange for belonging. But now, you're being invited to come home. Being whole doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest. It means owning your tenderness, your rage, your softness, your silence. It means knowing your light is not complete without your shadow. You are not just the parts of you that are easy to love. You are also the grief, the doubt, the desire, the fire. And when you bring those pieces back into your heart, you stop chasing love just to feel complete, because now you are complete. But here's the truth, most of us still enter relationships trying to patch our wounds, We hope someone will finally stay, finally choose us, finally love away the parts we hate. But true love begins when you no longer need someone to heal you, when your love is no longer a need, but a gift. You stop grasping, you start offering, not from desperation, but from depth. You become a safe place for yourself, and by doing so, you become a safe place for others. I remember a time when I thought healing meant becoming untouchable. If I could be low maintenance, unbothered, strong enough, then maybe I wouldn't get hurt. But all it did was disconnect me from myself. Real healing wasn't in pretending I didn't care. It was in holding the girl inside me, the one who still wanted to be chosen, and in choosing her again and again, I began to see this is what it means to love from wholeness. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to renounce desire. You don't need to do it all alone, because individuation isn't isolation, it's integration. It's knowing when to ask for help, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. It's building relationships, not to rescue you, but to reflect the love you've already reclaimed within. You no longer fear being seen, you invite it, because now you see yourself. So if you're on this path, wondering why it feels lonely, uncertain, slow, remember this: you are not falling apart, you are falling inward, and the version of you waiting on the other side, she's not more perfect, she's not more likable, she's just more you. And she doesn't beg for love, she becomes it. If this spoke to you, leave a quiet note in the comments: I'm coming home to myself. Because someone else, somewhere in their dark night, might see your words and feel a little less alone. Subscribe if you want more moments like this. Sometimes the next video shows up right when you're about to forget who you are, and when that happens, let this voice remind you you're not behind, you're not broken, you're just becoming. Here's the truth they never told you: the love you crave will never come from chasing. It doesn't arrive when you prove, or when you please, or when you perform. It comes when you pause, when you breathe, and when you finally choose yourself, because no one can make you feel whole if deep down you still believe you're not worthy. We all want love, we want presence, warmth, safety. But here's the hard truth: if someone gave you all of that right now, would you even know how to receive it? Because until you believe you deserve deep love, you'll keep settling for shallow versions of it. Changing the love you attract doesn't start with them, it begins with you. This isn't just healing, this is identity shifting, from the one who chases to the one who attracts. So how do you start? First, you pause the patterns born from fear, that message you want to send, not because you miss them, but because you're afraid they'll forget you. Pause. That moment you over-apologize, just to feel safe. Pause. That reflex to shrink yourself, just to be chosen. Pause. Because every action born from fear carries one silent message: please love me, so I can feel enough. And love that starts there never feels safe. Now comes the sacred part: sit with the loneliness, not as punishment, but as a rite of passage. Turn off the noise, put down the phone, close the tabs, close the loops, and just breathe. Ask yourself gently, what part of me am I still running from? What story is hiding behind this ache? Let it spill, raw, unfiltered, onto paper, into breath, into being, because that still, quiet voice inside, it isn't weakness, it's your compass. And once you stop escaping, you start remembering that you are not empty, you are just unfamiliar with your own depth. Now nourish yourself, not in dramatic ways, but in small, sacred ones. Move your body like prayer, feed your soul with beauty, do what reminds you, I am still here. Paint, dance, hike, write, create, feel, because you're not here to survive love, you're here to become so full of it that it overflows without effort. When your inner world becomes vibrant, your outer world begins to shift. People will feel something different in you. They may not know why, but they'll feel your frequency. I am no longer chasing. I am no longer begging. I choose me. I remember the first time I stopped chasing. It was terrifying. The silence felt like abandonment. The stillness felt like rejection. But it wasn't. It was space. Space for the version of me that no longer needed to beg for breadcrumbs. I wasn't being abandoned. I was becoming. And now, when someone walks into my life, I don't ask, will they stay? I ask, can I be fully me and still feel safe? That is the shift. That is healing. So if you're tired of chasing, tired of wondering, what else do I need to do to be loved? Let this be your turning point. You don't need to do more. You don't need to shrink. You don't need to perform. 1. More. Second, you were never too much. You were just never meant to settle. And the moment you stop running from yourself is the moment love finally knows how to find you. If this touched you, drop a comment. I choose me. So someone else can find the courage to do the same. When you stop searching, not from bitterness, but from wholeness, something powerful begins to shift. You start attracting, not from fear, but from truth. And love, it no longer feels like rescue. It becomes a choice. You don't need to beg. You don't need to prove. You don't need to perform. Just to be loved, because the moment you stop living in lack, you begin to radiate something rare, a different energy, quiet, rooted, magnetic. It doesn't chase, it doesn't plead, it simply is, and people feel it, like gravity, like truth. Here's what most don't realize: when you're emotionally full, love doesn't complete you, it meets you, it joins you, walks beside you, not to fix, but to mirror. You no longer fall for people who come to patch your wounds. You meet those who honor the healing you've already done, because when two whole humans collide, they don't merge to survive, they align to expand. That kind of love doesn't confuse, doesn't hurt, doesn't keep you guessing. It flows, because it's not trying to prove, it's just trying to be. We've all heard this: I just want someone who makes me feel enough. But here's the truth: it's not their job, it's yours. The right partner won't define your value, they'll reflect it, because you already own it. They won't save you from loneliness, because you've already found peace in your own presence. They won't erase your self-doubt, because you've learned to soothe your own inner voice. That's when love becomes a mirror, not a mask, because you're not desperate anymore. You don't try to control it. You don't force timing. You don't mold yourself into someone they'll stay for. You simply show up, whole, present, unapologetic. If it aligns, it aligns. If it doesn't, you release. No chasing, no shrinking, no losing yourself in someone else's story. Why? Because you've already come home to who you are. There was a time I measured my worth by how fast they replied, by how long they stayed, by how deeply they needed me. But that never made me feel safe. It made me feel small. It wasn't until I sat with myself, in silence, in loneliness, in truth, that everything changed. I stopped craving attention and started craving resonance. I stopped fearing solitude and started protecting my peace. And in that space, I began to attract those who didn't need to be chased, because they were already walking toward me. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are. You don't have to announce it. You just live it. You walk into rooms without seeking approval. You love without attachment to outcome. You receive without guilt, because love is no longer your oxygen, it's your reflection, and that is a different kind of magnetism. It doesn't seduce, it awakens. So if you're tired of chasing, tired of begging, tired of wondering why love feels so hard, let this be your turning point. You don't need to be smaller. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to prove your worth for one more second. You were never too much. You were simply taught to settle, and now, you're done settling. You don't wait to be chosen anymore. You choose, with love, with power, with peace. If this spoke to you, say it out loud. I am done begging. I am already enough. Sparkles and someone else, hearing your voice in the dark, might find their light too. Let's get honest. Love won't heal you, no matter how tender their words, how tightly they hold you, how deeply they care. If there's a wound inside you that you refuse to face, no one, not even the right person, can fix it for you. We've all grown up with a dangerous fairy tale. That one day, someone will come along, see our pain, and love it away. They'll kiss our forehead, say the perfect words, hold us so tightly that our loneliness finally disappears, but reality whispers something softer and deeper. Even the most beautiful love can't replace the healing you keep avoiding. They can sit beside you, they can witness your ache, they can offer presence, but they can't walk into your childhood. They can't clean up the pain you buried. They can't unwrite the stories you still believe about yourself. That's your work, yours alone. You know that space I'm talking about, don't you? That hollow ache that shows up even when you're being held. That feeling of being unseen, even when someone's looking right at you. That's not them, that's you, abandoning yourself. And no matter how much love they pour in, it all leaks out if the cracks within you remain ignored. Real healing doesn't start with someone loving you better. It starts with you, turning inward, sitting in the dark, asking the harder questions. What is this ache really about? What part of me still believes I'm not enough? What wound am I handing to others, hoping they'll carry it for me? Because love, real love, isn't a bandage, it's a mirror. It doesn't just bring you joy, it brings you face to face with your shadow. Not to hurt you, but to show you what's still waiting to be healed. And that's why the right love often feels uncomfortable, not because it's wrong, but because it shines light into places you've kept hidden. It asks you, can you stay with your pain, without making someone else responsible for it? Can you sit with discomfort, without blaming them for triggering it? Can you hold yourself, when no one else knows how? I remember that moment. I was loved, truly loved, but still, I felt hollow. They were patient, kind, consistent, and yet, I kept testing them, pushing them away, waiting for the day they'd finally leave. And one night, it hit me. They weren't the problem, I just hadn't made peace with myself, so I stopped expecting them to fix me, stopped handing them the emotional labor that was never theirs to carry. Instead, I sat with my own sadness, not to analyze it, but to hold it, like an old friend, long ignored, still waiting. And that moment changed everything, because the most powerful love you'll ever feel is the one you learn to give yourself. When no one else is there, it's when you stop outsourcing your healing, when you choose to reclaim your wholeness, one breath, one truth, one broken story at a time. And something miraculous happens when you do. You begin to show up in love differently. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't fear being left by people who were never meant to stay. You're not waiting to be rescued, you're simply open to walk beside someone who's also done the work. So if you've been waiting for love to heal you, let me tell you what I wish someone told me years ago. Love doesn't save you, love reveals you. The right person, they won't fix your pain, but they will stand beside you as you carry it, with courage, with grace. They won't rush your healing, they'll witness it. They won't rescue you from yourself, they'll remind you of the strength you forgot you had, because real love doesn't say, I will complete you. It says, I see all of you, and I'm not afraid. You are not broken, you are becoming, and the journey home to yourself is the greatest love story of all. Let's get honest. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't want you to shrink, bend, or break in half just to be kept. Real love says, I see you, stay as you are, and let's walk together, side by side, free. For many of us, love once meant sacrifice. We made ourselves smaller, just to fit into someone else's life. We softened our voice, bit our tongue, tolerated more than we ever should have, not because we were weak, but because we were scared that if we showed too much, we'd be abandoned. So we shaped ourselves into what we thought they wanted, and in the process, we forgot who we were. But something shifts when you stop molding yourself to be loved, and start remembering the truth of who you are. You stop choosing love out of loneliness. You stop staying just because you're afraid to be alone. You begin to choose from wholeness, and in that space, love transforms. It's no longer a contract of silence. It becomes a conscious connection, a sacred bond between two souls who are no longer looking to be completed, but ready to share the beauty of already being whole. In this kind of love, no one needs to tiptoe. No one says I'm fine when they're falling apart. No one shrinks just to fit. You ask for what you need, not because you're needy, but because you're honest. You express your truth, not to control, but to connect. You're no longer afraid to be too much, because you've learned your fullness is not a flaw, it's a gift. When you're rooted in who you are, love doesn't feel like chains, it feels like wings. You no longer grasp, or beg, or barter. You walk, side by side, two lives, two dreams, one shared rhythm, like two rivers flowing independently, choosing to meet at the same ocean. This isn't codependency, it's sacred partnership, a love that whispers, I choose you, not because I need you, but because my soul feels safe with yours. There was a time I thought love meant always adjusting, always pleasing, always giving more. If I asked for less, maybe I'd be easier to love. If I dimmed my light, maybe they'd stay. But all it did was make me invisible, exhausted, resentful, gone. It wasn't until I stopped chasing love and started building it within myself that everything changed. I no longer craved a love that completed me. I longed for a love that reflected me, and when that love came, I didn't have to abandon myself to be kept. I was met, as is. In mature love, you don't have to bend to be loved. You don't have to silence your soul just to stay in someone's story. You don't lose your identity, you share it. You build a space where two people are fully seen, fully heard, fully held. You don't become one by disappearing, you become one by choosing. Every day, again and again, not from fear, but from freedom. So if love has ever made you feel like you had to vanish to be chosen, let this be your reminder. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your essence, it welcomes your fullness, because when two whole people walk together, they don't hold each other back, they rise, not by clinging, but by co-creating, not by fixing, but by witnessing. And that kind of love, it doesn't say change for me. It says, come as you are, I'm walking beside you, all the way home. Underscore 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 underscore. You once dreamed of someone who would stay, someone who would hold you on your worst days, listen without judgment, love you, gently, completely, through every shattered version of yourself. But what if I told you, the one you've been waiting for, is actually you. We've all carried that same dream, haven't we? That someone would finally come along, see all our scars, stay through every storm, make us feel beautiful, even in our most broken moments. It's a beautiful hope. But here's the danger: when we place our healing in someone else's hands, we lose the very power we were born to carry. Because what happens when they can't meet us there, when they leave, when they fall short, when they simply don't know how to hold the weight of our inner world, we collapse, not because of them, but because we never learned to hold ourselves. So let me ask you something: the person you dreamed of, the one who whispers, "You're still enough," even when you're falling apart, why can't that person be you? Why do we pour so much compassion into others, but abandon ourselves the second we feel unworthy? What would change if you started showing up for you the way you always wished someone else would? Imagine this: you've messed up, you feel small, insecure, too much, too sensitive. Now imagine someone walking into that moment, not to fix you, not to shame you, but to simply say, "I'm here, even now, especially now." Now imagine that someone is you, offering your own arms as sanctuary, you, becoming the steady presence you've always longed for. This isn't a feel-good trend, this is radical healing, because the day you stop abandoning yourself is the day you stop begging the world to stay. That's what self-love really means. Not bubble baths, not quotes, not pretending to be okay, but staying present when your inner critic is screaming, holding your own hand when the shame returns, forgiving yourself and still staying. Ask yourself, what would someone who truly loved me do for me right now? And then, do that, not later, not after they call, not when you feel worthy enough. Now, I remember the night it hit me. I was curled up, sobbing into my pillow, replaying all the ways I'd been too much, too emotional, too needy, too sensitive to be loved. And then, like thunder, a voice dropped into my chest. What if you just stopped abandoning yourself here? What if you stopped waiting to be saved and started becoming the one who stays? That thought cracked something open. That night, I didn't run, I didn't judge, I just stayed with me, and over time, I became the presence I used to pray for. I became the arms that didn't let go, the voice that didn't leave, the one who saw every flaw and stayed anyway. Here's the most powerful truth of all: when you love yourself with this kind of fierce gentleness, you raise your standards. You stop chasing what doesn't see you. You stop settling for what doesn't feel safe, because your own love has set the new tone. And like gravity, the world begins to respond. People treat you differently, not because they changed, but because you did. You no longer wait to be chosen. You become the one who chooses. You look in the mirror and say, "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Because when you become the one who stays, the one who listens, comforts, forgives, uplifts, you stop searching for love to save you, and you start radiating the kind of love that heals you. And from that place, love doesn't just arrive, it recognizes you and says, "Finally, there you are. You once dreamed of someone who would stay, someone who would hold you on your worst days, someone who'd listen without judgment, someone who'd love you gently through every shattered version of yourself." But what if I told you something? The one you've been waiting for is actually you. We've all carried that same dream, that one day someone would come along, see our scars, and stay, hold us through the storm, and not flinch, make us feel beautiful. Even when we felt broken, it's a beautiful hope. But here's where it turns dangerous: when we place our healing entirely in someone else's hands. Because what happens when they leave, when they fall short, when they simply can't hold the weight of your inner world, we collapse, not because of them, but because we never learned how to hold ourselves. So let me ask you something. That person you dreamed of, the one who whispers, "You're still enough," even when you feel like you're falling apart, why can't that person be you? Why do we pour compassion into everyone else, but abandon ourselves? At the first sign of unworthiness, what would change if you showed up for yourself the way you always hoped someone else would? Picture this: you're crumbling, you made a mistake, you feel ugly, too much, too sensitive. Now imagine someone walks into that moment, not to fix you, not to silence you, but just to say, "I'm here, even now, especially now." Now imagine that person is you, offering your own arms as sanctuary, you, becoming the presence you always prayed for. This isn't just self-love on a t-shirt, this is radical, this is healing, because the moment you stop abandoning yourself is the moment you stop begging the world to stay. This is what real love looks like. It's not about perfection, it's not about never feeling doubt, it's choosing, over and over, to be there for yourself anyway. It's asking yourself, in your hardest moments, what would someone who truly loved me do right now? And then, you do that, for you, not later, not when you're better. Now, I remember the moment this truth cracked me open. I was curled up, sobbing into my pillow, replaying all the ways I had been too much for someone I loved, and then, the thought dropped into my heart, like thunder: what if I stopped abandoning myself here? What if I stopped waiting to be saved, and started staying for myself? That night, I didn't run, I didn't judge, I stayed, and slowly, I became the kind of presence I had always searched for. Here's the most powerful truth I've learned: when you love yourself with that kind of fierce gentleness, you teach the world how to love you too. You stop tolerating crumbs. You stop shrinking to be digestible. You stop chasing love that demands your silence, because your own love has raised the standard. And like a law of spiritual gravity, what you embody within is reflected back to you. People treat you differently, not because they changed, but because you did. So if you've been waiting for someone to love you the way you always dreamed, stop, look in the mirror, and say, "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Because when you become the one who stays, the one who listens, comforts, forgives, and uplifts, you stop searching for love to rescue you, and instead, you become the love that heals you. And from that place, love doesn't just arrive, it recognizes you, and softly says, "Finally, there you are."